Áine O'Neill, District 71 Poet in Residence. Thank you so much for joining me today for this interview. Maybe we could start with a little bit about yourself and your own Toastmaster journey.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jillian. It's a real pleasure to be here with you for this interview this evening. My own Toastmasters journey started in Irish Life, where I work. One of my colleagues, Ronan Carney, set up the club back in October 2018. I was absolutely delighted to go along and join because I always loved Toastmasters. I'd heard a lot about it through my brother, who was a member previously, and he got a great amount out of it. And I was part of the forming committee. I was instrumental in setting up the club with Ronan. I was the VP of PR and then the VP of Education in that club. And I just really got such a kick out of it and got to level 1. I learned a huge amount both about speaking and also listening in a low risk, safe environment where you could be yourself and you could learn a lot. You would get feedback. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. You wouldn't get it on a business course or an MBA as much or as encouraging as in Toastmasters. So I was absolutely delighted. And, you know, just from simple things like taking on roles such as the timer or the counter or the poet master, I learned huge amounts and gained in confidence. It was really just such a wonderful experience. I can't talk highly enough about it.
Thank you very much. And how did this poet in residence opportunity rear its head? How did you come across this opportunity?
Well, I'm in 2 clubs. I'm also in Viking Voices, and Claire Wright, the president there, told me that the district club growth director, Elizabeth Jordan, had an idea, or it was her brainchild really, to have a poet in residence for the district. So it would be the first poet in residence for not only the district, but for the whole of the international community. A wonderful idea by Elizabeth. And I was asked, would I like to put my name in the hat for it, because I was always reciting poems, at my own poems, at club events and also at club meetings. So I sent over 5 of my poems to Elizabeth, outlined my ideas for wanting to have the role, my reasons, my background in being a literacy tutor, and also as a English graduate from university. And lo and behold, then a couple of weeks later, I found out that I actually did get the role, and I was absolutely honoured and thrilled, over the moon to get it, you know, really delighted. So it was a great inspiration for me, and a really wonderful brainchild as well, Elizabeth.
Fantastic, thanks. And good to hear the background of it.
Yeah.
And maybe you could share with us what inspires you to create.
The main thing that inspires me is noticing things. And I've talked about this a lot in my workshops. Triggers, things that are called glimmers, things that give you that hit in your head where you think, oh, I could write something about that. I often use the example of one of my colleagues in work as a photographer. And he said to me, we'll go over here to this puddle to take a photograph. And I said to myself, what on earth is he going over to the puddle for? You know, it's dirty water on dirty ground. But he saw the light reflecting from the puddle. So that inspired me to write a poem called The Glimmer, you know, all about, you know, the reflection of the light on water on the puddle, and different inspirations that I had received, I had observed throughout just life in general. And, you know, the thud of the post on the mat in the hall, different things that come to you as you hear things, sense things, smell things, see things. You know, it could be a bunch of daffodils that you see in a field in spring that just brings the senses to the fore. You know, those kind of things really inspire you to create.
And are there any particular people or a person who inspires you?
The main, I suppose I have to say, my mother is my main inspiration and always has been, you know, just because she always encouraged me. So she was the main person. And there are playwrights and poets that also inspire me. So one of the main people or playwrights who was also a poet was Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. I studied him in college. I was in awe of him. I just think he's an amazing talent. He speaks, or he spoke of things in the 1500s that are true then and they're as true today. You know, when I read Othello, I was just overawed with his take on human nature, how Othello turned from this really honourable man to a green-eyed monster of jealousy through no fault of his own. The seed of jealousy was planted in his head. He ended up killing his wife very tragically through no fault of hers either, just because of how human nature can work. So I really love Shakespeare. I love his poetry as well. I also love Emily Dickinson, the simplicity of her poems, the metre and the rhyme in her poems. I love the poem, Hope is the Thing with Feathers. I think that's a great poem. So, you know, Shakespeare and Emily Dickinson and my mother are my main inspirations, I have to say.
Thank you. What a varied group of people to be inspired by. It's really, but it's very real, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Could I also ask you, how did you go about conceiving the poem that will be recited at this year's conference, Celebrate 50?
Yeah, the brief I was given was that the district team wanted a verse to encompass each of the countries in the district. So I chose something specific for each of the countries, and I tried to put in something about Toastmasters as well and tie it all together then with inspirational words at the start and more inspiration at the end. So I kind of topped and tailed it. So I chose different aspects of each country, things that we can all relate to. I won't spoil it for people who are going to hear it at the conference, but you know, I chose unique things, and we're all linked together by the district and by Toastmasters. So that was the mixing bowl and the ingredients I had in for the poem, and it turned out very well, I have to say. I'm delighted with it. And the icing on the cake then was topping and tailing it with inspirational words. So that was the way I worked it, and it was really great that it turned out so well. I was delighted with it.
That's great. I really look forward to hearing it at the conference there, Áine. It'll be amazing. Would you have any words of advice for somebody who might take on this role, the poet in residence of District 71, or indeed of any district across the Toastmastering world? Would you have any words of advice for them for the coming 2022-23 Toastmasters year?
Yeah, I would have 3 pieces of advice for them, and they're the same pieces of advice I give in my workshops to budding poets. And it's something I found in Stephen Fry's book, The Ode Less Travelled, which is all about poetry. It's really to take your time, keep a notebook, and don't be afraid. So take your time when writing the poems, keep a notebook, because this will be a very special year. You know, keep a scrapbook of all the different events that you attend, all the different ideas you come up with, all the things that have inspired you, and all the courage that you've gotten to put across your own poems. You know, and then don't be afraid. You know, you might feel, oh, I'm taking a big leap from just being an ordinary member of Toastmasters perhaps to being quite a different role altogether. So, you know, don't be afraid. You do have the knowledge, you know, within yourself. Most poets would have done creative writing courses or have some background in writing their own poems, and you know, that didn't just happen by accident. So you will have the knowledge within yourself. Don't be afraid to tap into your inner potential and your voice within. So that'll all work with you towards making a great year, and it's a year to be savoured and enjoyed.
That's wonderful advice. Yeah, don't be afraid. Say yes. Say yes to the challenge and the opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. Áine, what has been your favourite event or interaction during your year as the poet in residence of District 71?
Well, there have been several wonderful events and interactions, I have to say, during the year. The main one that I really stood out for me, though, was my first workshop that I devised and created and hosted, where people attended all across the district. It was on sharpening your senses back in October. It was the very first time I'd ever done anything like that. And it was a huge challenge for me, but one I was willing to take on and was really relishing, put a lot of work into it, and it turned out absolutely fantastic. So I was delighted with that. When I saw people from my workplace coming, people from all across the district, people I didn't know at all, people I knew very well, and they all wrote a poem about objects in their room, because at the time we were quite shackled with lockdown and, you know, restrictions, and couldn't go out that much. It was winter as well. So they had written home just about any object in their room where they were sitting. And we really tapped into the senses, honed into our observation skills, and they came up with some wonderful things. I remember one of my colleagues, Pat Carrick, wrote a poem about a rocking chair in his room. Wonderful poetry came out of that night, and I was absolutely in awe of what they came up with. It was great. That was my favourite interaction. There were others as well, obviously the Hall of Fame Awards with Margaret Page, the international president, and Matt Kinsey at the district Christmas party. They were all fantastic. But for me personally, the workshop was the best one.
And so, Áine, speaking of workshops, do you think there's any chance you might do a workshop for us at Celebrate 50 on the 20th, 21st or 22nd of May?
Yeah, I'd really love to do that, Jillian. That would be great. I'd be honoured to hold a workshop for the conference. I've held several now at this stage, starting last October and in different clubs then. And then in February, I did one on poetry for occasions. We did one on sharpening the senses, and we did others on tapping into the voice within and bringing out our inner potential. So I could definitely run a workshop. That would be an absolute pleasure. I would love to do that. And I'm sure it would be something that would stimulate the senses for all the members in the district. They would be more than welcome to come along and see what poetry comes out, because poetry is where the inside world of the emotions meets the outside world, where we get the triggers and the glimmers and things that inspire us. That's where the real magic and chemistry happens. A lot of people might think poetry is beyond them, something they can't do, but I've witnessed people who have never written poetry before come up with wonderful creations. So it really would be an absolute honour to hold a workshop at the conference. I'd be delighted.
Lovely. I think lots of people will be really interested in that. Now, Áine, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you for having this conversation with me here today. And I'm really looking forward to your poem at the conference. And now I'm really looking forward to your workshop as well. So thank you very much for joining me.
No problem, Jillian. Thank you very much.